Welcome to the Chalkboard, my fellow football nerds, for episode number 11 of Chalk Talk, brought to you by the Painted Lines. I'm your host, Shane Half, and you can follow me on Twitter at @halfandhalf_TPL. I'm joined today, yet again, by the best co-host in the game. You've seen him on the Tough Cover Pod, having a fantastic run of gambling, I might add. It's Mark Henry Jr. You can follow him on Twitter at @MarkHenryJr_. Mark, how you doing?
I'm doing great. Like you said, on a great run for gambling, but some bad Eagles news in the past 20 to 30 minutes. So I'm sure we'll get into that, but it definitely has me a bit down, or a bit more down than I was 20, 30 minutes ago.
Yeah, absolutely. And we'll get into it. We've got a great show lined up for you guys today. We're going to break down all the week 3 storylines, with the exception of last night's game, of course, to get you ready for all of the games, including the Eagles Monday Night Football showdown with the Dallas Cowboys. But before we get into that, this podcast is going out live on Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube. So drop a comment if you're live for a chance to get your thoughts featured on the show. We'd love to interact with you guys that way. We are also on Apple Podcasts, so please follow, rate, review. 5-star ratings go towards helping us get some more followers, so we really appreciate it. So, Mark, let's dive into it. We'll start off, as we always do, with the Eagles game before we throw it around the NFL. And so we have Eagles at Dallas on Monday Night Football in a game that maybe loses a little bit of its luster with some recent injury news. So before that, the injury news we knew. The injury reports from Thursday, Fletcher Cox and Hassan Ridgeway both did not participate in the Eagles' practice with an illness. It is not COVID-related, so they're expected to play on Sunday. Rodney McLeod continues his journey back to playing. He was limited in practice. And, of course, we know Brandon Graham and Brandon Brooks are both gone. Graham for the season, Brooks for the foreseeable future. But news just broke that Jordan Mailata with a strain, was it MCL strain?
I just saw sprained knee. I didn't see MCL. I just saw sprained knee, so I didn't see a specific anything like that.
Okay, I think I saw it was a sprained MCL, but he is out for Monday night, and Andre Dillard is going to get the start in his place. So definitely not ideal, and we'll get into that. On the Cowboys side of the ball, DeMarcus Lawrence, as we know, he's out for the majority of the season. Neville Gallimore, Dorrance Armstrong, and Carlos Watkins are also all gone from the Cowboys' defensive line. So it's a war of attrition in the trenches as the Cowboys' defensive front and the Eagles' offensive front both enter the game really banged up. And so, Mark, let's get into it. What do you want to talk about?
It's hard to talk about anything else but the Mailata thing. We'll get into it more just in general, but for the Eagles to win this game or to compete in this game in general, they're going to have to score a lot of points. I think that they're going to have to put some points up on the board against this lackluster Dallas defense. They're going to have to throw through the air, and a big part of that is protecting Jalen Hurts long enough to be able to do so. And now that you're missing Brandon Brooks, we knew that going in, but the Mailata thing really feels like, I don't know, like a punch to the gut after the Brandon Brooks news, where it's going to be tough to even hold off a bad Cowboys pass, or at least a below average Cowboys pass rush. At least we're not going against an elite pass rushing team in this game, is I guess something you could look at as a positive. But yeah, that's got to be the main concern at this point now, needing to protect Jalen and giving Jalen enough time to make plays down the field, giving him enough time to make plays down the middle and the short and intermediate routes even. They're going to have to score a lot of points, and that's got to be my main focus on this game.
Yeah, we talked last week about the Cowboys moving Parsons to defensive end to let him pass rush, and how that is the best use of his talents. But he's very small as a defensive end, only 245 pounds. With all the guys that the Cowboys have out, they're really small on the defensive line. On average, the Eagles outweigh them by about 50 pounds in the trenches. Now, obviously, that's before Jordan. Yeah, that's before Jordan Mailata goes out. So I jokingly tweeted out when I saw the Mailata injury that Parsons is about to win Rookie of the Year on the back of hype from a 6-sack game. I've got no confidence in Andre Dillard, but on the flip side, Dillard struggles everywhere, but the biggest place he struggles is against power rushers, and that's not Parsons. And so although that's not ideal, matchup wise, at least Dillard is a little more equipped to handle a speed guy off of the edge than he is a power rusher.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, how could you be confident in Andre Dillard? He hasn't given us anything to be confident in. It's at least we're not going against a Bosa again this week. I guess is one positive, but yeah, it's going to be tough to block with two guys that we had a week ago not in there. I mean, it's as simple as that. It's going to be tough, but at least we have already talked about it. Dallas has its own injury issues, so hopefully they feel the same way about their people that they're missing. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm interested to see, we know that Dallas Goddard is a pretty good blocker. I'm interested to see how much they're going to utilize him in the passing game versus keeping him in to block now, particularly on Dillard's side. He's a guy they can't be confident in. One of the matchups I noted going into this is we needed Goddard to have a good game. With Parsons shifted down to defensive end with Keanu Neal out, you're looking at Jalen Smith and LVE, who were both really bad last year at linebacker. And traditionally, Goddard has been good against the Cowboys, but now you wonder, are you going to be able to get him out on routes and work that intermediate area of the field, or are you going to have to keep him in and help, chip on Parsons or whoever's rushing against Dillard? Can Dillard hold his own, or are the Eagles going to be forced to kind of keep Goddard in pass protection? Because that's a huge win for the Cowboys if they can force that.
Yeah, it absolutely is. Yeah, I mean, I think the next focus, obviously, and a big concern that of everyone that's going to go against Dallas, how do you handle dealing with CD and Cooper? How do you handle dealing with Zeke and Pollard? I mean, they just have so many weapons that they can use in the passing game. And obviously Dak is a fantastic quarterback. So that's obviously a main concern. And I mean, the defenses look great, and I think that they've only given up one play over 20 yards so far this year. I think they're the only team in the league that's done that. So that's a positive. But if you want to go on the other side with the negative, that they're only one of two teams without a turnover. So you can look at it both ways, and that's going to be something that's really important in this game. They're going to have to come up with a turnover at some point in an important moment, whether that be in the red zone or whether that be to get a short field for the offense. That's going to be something that they have to do, and every other team in the NFL is doing it. So it's not like I'm asking for too much here. So a turnover would be really important, and also just, getting after Dak. And I know that we're missing Brandon Graham, but we're going to have to collapse that pocket so he can't escape and make these plays where he escapes out of the pocket and has 4 extra seconds to throw, give CD and Cooper an extra chance to get open if they don't get open initially. And you don't need to give guys like CeeDee Lamb an extra chance to get open.
Yeah, I'm not too terribly concerned about Prescott's mobility. In what I've seen from him, it seems really limited coming back from the injury. Now, if you haven't watched the Cowboys, don't take that to mean that he hasn't been playing at an elite level, because he certainly has. But that mobility that he had pre-injury just hasn't been there yet. He doesn't look comfortable when he's forced out of the pocket when he runs. But, he's thrown for 640 yards in 2 games. And one of those games was against the Bucs defense, and the other one was against the the Chargers, which is certainly no pushover. And so, this Cowboys offense is the real deal. They're using Tony Pollard now, which I really like. Pollard is this guy that, in the open field, he's a better player than Zeke. Zeke's better between the tackles. He's better at turning that 2 yards into 3 yards, but Pollard is a more electric player, and I like that they're using both of them. And, I mean, the 49ers gave the blueprint last week. You pitch the ball, you get outside, you take the defensive tackles out of the run defense, and they were able to move the ball on the ground really well. So I'm interested to see if the Cowboys will follow that plan, and if they do, if they'll use Pollard to do that rather than Zeke. But the Eagles secondary, you alluded to it, that they've limited big plays under Gannon, only one play of over 20 yards. Well, last year, this secondary got torched by the Cowboys with Andy Dalton at quarterback. And so the big question for me is, can they contain this Cowboys offense? Can they make them make methodical drives down the field to go score touchdowns?
Yeah, I mean, touching on your first point, because this is just something I wanted to touch on with Dallas. I've heard a lot of people, because Dallas is getting Pollard involved, that's a negative for Zeke and everyone's crushing Zeke. Zeke has not been bad. He was pretty good last week. He's not superstar Zeke. I don't think that Dallas using Pollard is like admitting that Zeke is a bad player at this point. I think it's using a similar strategy that Cleveland uses. Cleveland uses Chubb and Hunt. Maybe they use Chubb a little less than they would, obviously, if they didn't have Hunt. And it seems to be working fantastic for their rushing game. So I think Dallas can really model something after that. And yeah, I think that they absolutely will take a lot of what Shanahan showed in terms of a blueprint, in terms of running the ball against the Eagles and pitching, getting to the outside, taking Fletch and Hargrave out of the play. It's definitely something you want to do, considering who Fletcher Cox is and how good Javon Hargrave has been to start this year. So they're going to test Barnett. They're going to test Sweat, Kerrigan. Those are the guys they're going to test on the edges, rushing the ball, as opposed to just going up the gut, probably.
Yeah, one of my biggest questions coming into this game is, La'el Collins is still suspended at right tackle for the Cowboys. So, that's the side that Brandon Graham usually lines up on. Can the Brandon Graham-less Eagles take advantage of the Cowboys being down a right tackle? And, given, the Eagles' good defensive front, the Cowboys' weakness at right tackle, will the Cowboys be able to run the football? But the other question is, do they even need to run the football to beat this Eagles defense? So I'm really interested to see what their game script, what their game plan is. Do you come out and do you attack that right side? I mean, do you attack behind the weakness of your offensive line against the weakness of the Eagles defensive line? Do you spread it out and throw the ball? I really have no idea what Dallas is going to try to do coming into this game.
Yeah, I mean, they have a ton of options, obviously, and that's what you get when you have the weapons that they do on offense. And yeah, I mean, San Fran showed you can give up death to a million paper cuts against this Eagles defense, basically just 15-play drives and just really control a game and control possession, run the ball, short passes, and I'm sure they'll do an absolute ton of that, and they have the guys to do it. So it's really going to come down to getting a couple, winning the battle of field position, pinning them deep a couple times, getting them to punt every once in a while, getting a turnover here and there. Like, they're going to have to make some plays, and they're going to have to, and that really comes down to the secondary. And again, this is not the type of, I mean, Cooper and CeeDee Lamb are, I said it last week with Debo, and I was disappointed at how often it felt like Debo was able to get exactly what they wanted on third down or whatever the play was. I said I'd be disappointed if Slay or Nelson didn't do a good job on Debo. I didn't really think they did. So I'll be disappointed if they don't do a good job on CD and Cooper. And that's obviously it's a tough task with Dak, especially. But again, if Darius Slay is worth that trade, we know he wasn't probably, and worth the contract, which he isn't. He has to be able to cover guys like CD and Cooper. They're not athletic freaks like DK. They're not athletic freaks like Hopkins. Like, I understand giving guys a pass on the big, strong, athletic receivers when they're not within 4 or 5 inches of them. So I get that. But with CD or Cooper, those are the guys. I get they're incredible receivers, especially CD, in my opinion. So I get that they're really, really good. But these are both guys that, I mean, athletically and build-wise, Slay and Nelson should be able to stick with, at least to some degree.
One of the interesting things for me in this game is just the two very different styles of defense that these teams play. So you have the Eagles, who through 2 games are allowing 11.5 points a game, which is one of the best rates in the NFL, but they are one of 2 teams that haven't forced a turnover. So they get stops, but they don't give you the ball in plus territory. And on the flip side, you have the Cowboys, who are allowing 24 points a game, which is below average in the NFL, but they lead the NFL in takeaways with 6. And so you've got 2 defenses, one who can't stop anybody unless they get a turnover, and the other one who seems to be able to stop anybody, but they can't get a turnover. And so, in those types of matchups, you figure that turnovers, there's a lot of luck involved in a turnover. The ball, which way the ball bounces, does the hand hit the ball just right to knock it out, those sorts of things. And so, under normal circumstances, you're going to take that consistency over the splash plays, which should favor the Eagles. But you do have a guy, although he's avoided him this year, that is a little turnover prone in Jalen Hurts in terms of fumbles and some interceptions. And so, how do you see that playing out? Do you think the Eagles offense is able to avoid those turnovers and make the Cowboys earn those stops? Or do you think things could kind of snowball for the Eagles?
Yeah, I mean, in terms of their their secondary, I'm not necessarily afraid of anyone in their secondary stepping up and making a play in terms of interceptions. And that's not to say Jalen Hurts definitely won't throw a pick. Obviously, anything could happen. But obviously, I think the fumble is the more concerning aspect if you look at last year's turnovers from Jalen Hurts. I've been incredibly impressed on a couple of these hits from the blind side or from behind in the pocket where he seems to hold on. There was a hit in week 1 against Atlanta where he was kind of scrambling left out of the pocket, and he got hit from behind, and the ball was all the way out. He brought it right in, didn't fumble, and I was shocked. It was like maybe it was just Carson. I was so used to watching Carson Wentz, who tries to fumble. That Jalen Hurts not fumbling that ball was shocking to me. So I've seen a couple plays like that this year where I've been really impressed, where I don't know if Jalen Hurts has worked on that or if that's just, luck, or I know a lot of turnover. It is luck, but I mean, I do think that you have to look into the fact that he's done a better job. He's done a better job this year. I don't think it's just luck so far. I think that it's something in terms of something he worked on.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, he's credited with 1 fumble right now. And I think that was that bad Jason Kelce snap. I don't remember another one. So it's something he's eliminated so far. To me, if the Eagles want to win this game, certainly forcing a turnover on defense wouldn't hurt. But I think if they can play clean offensively, like coaches like to say, every drive's got to end in a kick. We're kicking an extra point, a field goal, or we're punting the ball away, and we're going to make Dallas drive on this defense. We're going to make them face this pass rush. We're going to make them earn everything that they get. And I mean, you're not going to win playing the field position game or kicking field goals against Dallas, but you can keep yourself in the game. And the longer you stay in the game, the more opportunities you're going to have to get that game-changing play. And so, to me, I look at the Eagles as an underdog in this game. I thought they were a little bit of an underdog before the Mailata injury, and the Mailata injury certainly doesn't help. And so, to me, the mentality is I want to see Nick Sirianni call a better game. I want to see him have a good game plan. I want to see better play from Hurts. And I just want to see the Eagles hang in this game and see what can happen in the fourth quarter of a 1-score game.
Yeah, before the Mailata news, I was feeling like this was as 50-50 as a game as I see on the board this week. The Mailata news kind of pushed me towards Dallas. So I think Dallas does edge us out. I do think it's a really close game, and I think it comes down to the wire. So hopefully, play here, play there, ball bounces, and we win the game. And I do think that that's possible. Maybe I'm overreacting to an injury, maybe because it happened like an hour ago or whatever. But it does feel like missing 2 guys in the offensive line is enough to push me in that Dallas direction. But I think it says a lot that Vegas has only made this Dallas -4. I think if you look at the public and you looked at everyone I've heard loves Dallas, by the way, in terms of the gambling community and stuff like that. So everyone likes Dallas wins games, something that's usually a good sign, especially for the Eagles, who win a lot when they're never expected to and lose when they're expected to win. So just historically. Maybe that's giving me a little bit of hope that everyone loves Dallas, which is stupid. And this line is still at 4.5. That tells you that if this was in Philadelphia, this would be a 2. Eagles are favored by 2 or 1.5. It's usually a 6-point swing in terms of how they set the lines. And that tells you that these teams aren't far off in Vegas's mind. And I agree. I don't think these teams are too far apart because obviously you look at our offense and you look at the Dallas offense, you're like, oh, Mark, how could you think that they're not far apart? And it's like, well, yeah, look at the defense. And I think that I'd argue there's just as big of a gap potentially. So we're going to find out how big of a gap on both sides there is for sure this weekend, or Monday, not this weekend, actually. So that'll be interesting to see.
Yeah, ultimately, when you look at this game, I think there's a lot of a coin toss element to it. I don't think it's a big advantage either way between the offense and that defense. But, in terms of making a pick for this game, I trust Kellen Moore as a play caller more than Nick Sirianni at this point in time. I trust Dak Prescott more as a quarterback than Jalen Hurts. And the Cowboys get the home game out of this. So I'm picking the Cowboys. I've got a 31-21 score in the Cowboys' favor. But I wouldn't be surprised at all if the Eagles are able to pull out this upset on the road.
Yeah, I'll go 30. I'll go 34-31.
All right. Well, anything else you want to get out there about Eagles Cowboys before we throw it around the NFL?
No, I'm ready to go around the league.
All right. So here we go. Carolina at Houston was last night. So that one's That one's irrelevant, but what I was going to say was that the Panthers led the league in scoring defense, and they're facing a third-round rookie in his first start. And so, I think you kind of saw that play out. You see Christian McCaffrey go down, which is obviously terrible for the Panthers, but Sam Darnold looked pretty good again. So, get it. I don't know if that's more of an indictment of Adam Gase or tells you more about Matt Rule, but maybe the Panthers have a little bit of something going here.
For me, I'm still not reacting. I still haven't seen, anything that's changed my opinion in terms of just because of the competition they've played. But we'll see. I mean, I'm willing to be proven wrong going forward. We'll definitely see. I tweeted it out this morning, and I quote tweeted it from July 7th. I basically predicted that the Panthers were going to go 3-0 in my tweet, and that everyone was going to love Matt Rule and Sam Darnold. So the rest of I think the true test starts now. Obviously, McCaffrey is going to be gone for a few weeks, and J.C. Horn for 2 to 3 months. So we'll see how they're able to adjust. And I think they had a couple of other injuries on defense.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's roll into the Sunday slate. We have the Chicago Bears traveling to Cleveland to take on the Browns. This will be Justin Fields' first start. He played last week after Andy Dalton went down. He looked terrible. The question is he going to be better after a full week going into a game, knowing he's going to be a starter, gets those starter reps? What do you think about this one?
I'm going to surprise you here. I'm going to take the Bears. I'm going to take the Bears to win. I'm taking them with the points, really. So if I'm taking them plus 7.5, I have some belief that they can win this game and that Justin Fields can surprise some people. I think that he's going to come out looking a lot better. I think they're going to use his legs a lot more. Hopefully Matt Nagy doesn't, make me eat my words here. But I think this is going to be a close game. I think this is the game Chicago competes with. They probably don't win, but I might as well throw an upset winner out here with Chicago. And I have another crazy upset winner coming up too. But I think Allen Robinson's going to get going this week. He hasn't really been himself yet. He still needs to get paid. He still needs to go get that contract. And if you're going to go do that, then, go out there and show chemistry with Justin Fields, who's the long-term starter in Chicago. And he can't go 2 for 26 again with Fields like he did last week in the 3 or so quarters that Fields plays. So I think that's going to be a big factor in this game, Allen Robinson. So I'll go Chicago to win. I also will just say, maybe I'm being a little risky, I got a 2-game lead on Shane on the year so far. I've won 11-5 the first 2 weeks. Shane went 11-5 and 9-7 in week 2. So he's got to make up some ground here.
It was a rough week last week. I've got all the confidence in the world in Justin Fields. I have none of that confidence in Matt Nagy. I don't have any confidence he won't screw this up. Beyond that, I think it's a good matchup for Cleveland. They've got the athletes to shadow Fields with John Johnson, with Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah. So they've got some guys they can have spy on Fields, shadow him, and kind of try to take away his legs. And then on the offensive side of the ball, I think OBJ is supposed to be back. I think he's tentatively going to play. They've kind of strung that along. I think he probably could have played last week, but they thought that was an easy game, and so they kept him out and then almost lost it. But now Jarvis Landry's out. You've got Baker dealing with the shoulder injury. There's a lot of unknowns in this game. If Baker's at 100% and OBJ's at 100%, I like Cleveland in this game pretty easily, but you just never know. Teams will be cagey with injuries. So I've got Cleveland, but if Baker comes out, takes a big hit, or doesn't look 100%, I think you could see the Bears pull a shocker here.
For sure.
So, all right, moving on to the Baltimore Ravens traveling to Detroit to take on the Lions. The Ravens finally slayed the Patrick Mahomes dragon. Lamar Jackson had never beaten Patrick Mahomes, so now the question is the emotion of that going to catch up with them? They come into this game, they're still missing Ronnie Stanley. They're missing Derek Wolfe, Brandon Williams, Deshaun Elliott, Taven Young, Justin Houston, and their entire running back core. So, we talked about last week, Lamar's a top 5 quarterback because regardless of what's going on around him, he can put you in a position to win. And he's playing a bad defense, but he's kind of got the odds stacked against him again in terms of injuries. What do you see playing out here?
Yeah, I think you said it well, and I'm still not sold on Baltimore in terms of the roster with the injuries they have being a legitimate contender, and it really just felt like that might have been bit of a fluky game last week that they would have lost if Clyde didn't fumble, to be quite honest. But I mean, they shouldn't lose this game. But if there was going to be a letdown spot, I really wish they were playing a team that I had any belief in terms of being an underdog. If there was going to be a letdown spot, you finally slay the dragon, like you said, in Patrick Mahomes, and then you have to travel to Detroit. Lamar is missing practice because
he flipped into the end zone.
Yeah, at first apparently, and then you get the correction. It's actually an illness. So yeah, it's pretty unbelievable that might have hurt Lamar. Pretty stupid to do that, but whatever. I do think that they win just because Detroit is Detroit. That defense has been an absolute train wreck, especially since losing Okudah. I mean, I don't know how they're going to be able to stop Baltimore, stop Lamar on the ground, stop Mark Andrews, Hollywood. I mean, I just think I think Baltimore rolls here, but I wouldn't be surprised if this is a close game. I won't be touching this from a gambling perspective.
Yeah, I think it ultimately comes down to me that Jared Goff is really bad against the blitz, and the Ravens are one of the most blitz-happy teams in the NFL. And so, we've talked a lot about Lamar. I think the defense win this one for Baltimore, and I just don't have any faith in Jared Goff.
That's totally fair. I mean, who could?
Sean McVay couldn't.
Yeah, no way. And he won't stop talking about it.
Yeah. So I'm going to say this now because I'll forget by the time we get to them. I thought it was interesting. They talked about they ran like a jet sweep to Cooper Kupp. I think it was on like a 3rd and 2 last week. And afterwards they asked him about it. And he's like, yeah, I didn't like that play call. Like I shouldn't have made that play call. Thought it was interesting that with Jared Goff, he had no confidence on 3rd down that Jared Goff could get the ball where it needed to be. So he would just hand it off to his playmaker. It's like he's still learning how to trust a quarterback and just call plays and let his quarterback execute. I thought that was interesting. But
my favorite thing was when he said, credit to Jared Goff for making this a place that Matthew Stafford would want to come play. It's like, oh my God. Like, yeah. What are we even saying? Like,
all right, rolling on. Arizona Cardinals at the Jacksonville Jaguars. What do you think about this one?
I don't have much to say here. Jacksonville's let me down so thoroughly. I mean, that team is just a train wreck. The O-line is worse than a train wreck. It's a plane crash and a train wreck. Like, it's just an absolute mess. I mean, Urban has to get fired at this point. Like, I know we're 3 games into a 4-year deal or whatever it is. I mean, what an absolute disaster. I mean, Trevor looks terrible. He really looks bad, and I can't believe that a guy like we saw in college. I mean, I really just I thought he was the best QB prospect I'd ever seen, and he does not look anything like it. He's been really inaccurate. He's been late on things. He's not been able to diagnose blitzes, and who knows? I mean, maybe I do think most of it is Urban, the O-line, just a bad situation. But I mean, maybe I overrated him a bit. That's definitely for sure possible. I definitely think, you got a new coach in there next year, and I think this is a different story. And you get some, hopefully a top pick O lineman, and you get some other guys to put around him, ETN back, and this is a different story. But for the rest of this year, I mean, how could I pick the Jags? So I'll go Arizona.
Yeah, they will be looking at the number 1 overall pick potentially. So, yeah, I mean, the Jags gave up 440 yards to Tyrod Taylor and the Texans. They gave up 398 to Teddy Bridgewater, who we have now declared elite here on Chalk Talk. The Cardinals are much more explosive than either of those teams. Kyler's going to boost his MVP hype this week. And I put money on the Cards over 30.5 points. They've been over that number both weeks already, and they haven't been playing the Jags. So that's one of my bets for this week. But I have the Cardinals winning this one pretty easy.
Yeah, makes sense.
All right, the Chargers traveling to Kansas City to take on the Chiefs. The Chargers have put up 20 points a game so far against Washington, whose defense we thought was good, and now we think maybe isn't, and against Dallas, whose defense we know isn't good. That will not keep pace with the Chiefs. No chance. On top of that, you've got Joey Bosa, Derwin James, Chris Harris Jr. all dealing with injuries. To be honest, I'm having a hard time seeing a pathway to this even being a close game. I think Kansas City bounces back in a big way against a team that may not be as good as we thought they were going to be in the Chargers.
Yeah, you stole a lot of words right out of my mouth there, but I really think this has the opportunity to be a rout by Kansas City and a bounce back spot. It's so obvious that they should have won that game last week, and they didn't even play poorly. So I don't think they have all that much to correct. I mean, unless unless Justin Herbert starts running like Lamar Jackson. So I think that this is an obvious spot for Kansas City to win, and that defense to be a little better. Obviously, maybe run the ball a bit more efficiently. But yeah, I mean, the Charger, I think this is more so the focus of this game after this game happens and during this game when it's 31-14 in the third quarter or whatever, and Romo has to sit there and find something to talk about. I think that the big focus is going to be like, where is the year-to-year progression for the Chargers and Justin Herbert? Like, and progression isn't always linear. I mean, it's not just like a guy gets better because it's his second year. And I'm yelling at a lot of Sixers fans about that because of Tyrese Maxey. But I mean, it's like, I'm a little bit concerned. I was not a Justin Herbert guy pre-draft. Like I swing and a miss there. I was just not sold on him whatsoever, really. And I blame that on his senior year at Oregon. I was really high on him after his junior year. It seemed like he had a lot of missed reads and a lot of picks and stuff like that in his senior year that led to me being down on him. So I missed that, but I'm starting to see some of the same kind of things with turnovers and with making weird decisions in the red zone and things like that kind of remind me of why I didn't love this prospect. And maybe we went a little overboard crowning this guy as the best young quarterback in football last year. And I made a lot of excuses for him this offseason because I thought Anthony Lynn was a terrible coach. So I thought a lot of their problems and a lot of their late game mess ups and their red zone, miscues, I thought a lot of that could go by the wayside with a new coach. But I'm concerned. I mean, this is a team I picked to go to the playoffs, and I'm not feeling great about that prediction whatsoever, especially with the rest of that division looking so fantastic.
Yeah, absolutely. Moving on, we have the New Orleans Saints at the New England Patriots. I think the question in this game is, which New Orleans offense are we going to see? Like, are we going to see the one that put up 38 points on Green Bay or the one that put up 7 on Carolina? And then which defense are we going to see? The one that held Aaron Rodgers to 3 points or the one that gave up 26 points to Sam Darnold? So, I mean, what do you trust here? Do you trust the boom or bust, or do you trust the consistent horse?
I have a first tier on Chalk Talk. I had my own pick on this game, and I'll give that in a second. While I'm sitting here thinking about the game, thinking about what I'm going to say, I think I should be on the under in this game. What's the under at 42? And it's went down. It's went way down. It's opened at 47. It's at 42.5. Yeah, it's tough for me. But I think this could be like a 14-10 game. This could be like because you look at New England, what they want to do, and they're going to want to take Kamara out. They take out the number one weapon that they think if they take that out, the off that you cut the head off the snake, kind of that kind of theory. You take off the most explosive player in the offense, and you can't do all that much if you're New Orleans. And we saw that last week when Kamara couldn't get anything going. I think he only has like 120 yards from scrimmage so far on the year, Kamara, and a lot of that's because of last week. But I'm interested to see if they're able to get something else going on offense, New Orleans, if New England is able to take Kamara out of the game. And I'm betting on the fact that they do. I think New Orleans wins this game. I don't have a lot of confidence. I took New Orleans plus 3.5 early in the week. I was really confident in it. The more the week's gone on and like the more I've kind of thought about the whole Kamara getting taken out again, probably by Belichick, getting a bit more nervous, but I have not been impressed by Mac Jones. I feel like I've heard a lot of people out there talk really highly about Mac Jones. If you watch the games, he's really not taking any chances. He is playing to the safest extent of like the quarterback position. And, if this is a close game with New Orleans, I don't know if you can just dink and dunk your way to winning the game. And I'm going to go with New Orleans because besides last week, I was so impressed with their defense in week 1 against Green Bay, especially when you see how explosive Green Bay was in week 2. And that could just be a weird game, but I've been more impressed by New Orleans defense than I even was last week by the Patriots defense. I think last week was more of a Zach Wilson issue than anything else, really. But I'm going with New Orleans. I'm not all that confident, though.
Yeah, I look at, you divide players into 3 tiers. You've got the players you win because of, the players you win with, and the players you win in spite of. And Mac Jones is solidly in that players you win with category. And Jameis Winston, it just depends week to week if he's a player you win because of or a player you win in spite of. For me, I trust the consistency more than the boom or bust of Jameis. But really, this is the type of game that if I was betting it, I'd take the points. I'd take whoever the underdog is because I'm not confident in either. But, just picking it straight up here, I think New England is the team that I would back in this one.
Yeah, it's Saints by 3.5, and you had it right on there with my thought process when I initially took it. I thought it was a 50-50 game, a pick'em game, and so when I initially saw that 3.5, I hopped on. Getting a little gun shy about it now, a little nervous. I think that could be an anything goes game right there.
Yeah. All right, 9 games left to go here for the Week 3 slate. We got Indianapolis Colts at the Tennessee Titans. The Titans with a huge comeback win against the Seahawks last week. It saw both Julio Jones and Derrick Henry getting back on track. For the Colts, the question is, will Wentz play? I don't think he's going to. I know they're still holding out hope. But if he does, he's definitely not at 100%. And if he doesn't play, Jacob Eason gets the start, and he's only had 5 career NFL passes. I think this is an easy one for the Titans.
So this is from like 20 minutes ago. Rappaport said Carson Wentz participated in practice and the team will give him every opportunity to play, but it will be a pregame decision. Some renewed optimism at him starting came today. So I think if you're betting on the Titans, this is going to sound crazy. I think you want Carson Wentz to play. I mean, I think you want a guy with 2 sprained ankles who can't take, any pressure in the pocket without, completely freaking out. I think you want him to play if you think that if you're a Tennessee fan or whatever. And yeah, I think this could be a situation. I was so low after week 1 on Tennessee because I came into the year expecting a lot out of Tennessee. And maybe this could be a situation where that week 2 kind of rejuvenates them and kind of not saves their season. It's still so early, but it could send them on a bit of a run. It could send them here, if they were 0-2 facing this game, and maybe this is a completely different conversation, but that comeback gives you, especially in Seattle, I was just so impressed by the fact that, Derrick Henry was just able to basically win them that game. And they won that game without Julio getting robbed of a touchdown, in my opinion. I think that was 100% a touchdown. I don't know if you saw that play, but they went and reversed that after calling it a touchdown. And I didn't see anything on the play that should have been overturned. But I was really impressed with that win last week. So it has more to do with Indy than Tennessee, but with this, how the schedule sets up for Tennessee, I think they could go on a bit of a run here.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, Washington football team at the Buffalo Bills. The Bills torched the Dolphins defense last week in a game that was kind of a throwaway once Tua goes down that first drive. It sucks the wind out of you, but now they face a Washington defense that I'm done calling elite. I'm not even sure I'm willing to call them good anymore. On the Washington side, I'm about to say something that's going to trigger Mark, and then I'm going to end up having to cut him off so we don't spend the rest of the time on this one game. But I don't believe in Taylor Heineke. I think, maybe he's a game manager, but at the end of the day, that only works if you have a running game and a defense. And right now, Washington doesn't have either. They're 20th in rushing yards per game and 24th in total defense. I think this is a cakewalk for Buffalo.
The Heineke Hive is going to roll into Buffalo and win this game. I actually think it. I've talked myself into it, but the main reason I think it is because when you look at Antonio Gibson and you look at, apparently the Washington media has been crucifying Rivera and the offense over there for not giving Gibson more touches, which is perfectly reasonable. I know you were upset about it. I can't remember if that was week 1 or week 2. You were
it was week 2. You've got a backup quarterback in, and you only hand the ball off 8 times or whatever it was. That's absurd.
Yeah, it's crazy. They need to get, and especially even not just rushing the ball, they need to get the ball in his hands as many ways as they can with how productive he's been per touch. And coming out of college, he was a guy who was like a receiver out of the backfield, and they even lined him out up wide at Memphis. So this is a guy they need to be able to use in more capacities. And I think after a week of hearing about it, even like maybe in a week and a couple days, I love that they're coming off of a Thursday night game, getting some extra rest. I really think Washington's going to cover the spread at 9.5. It's down to 7.5, so I got it early. But I'm going to go a little crazy here and take their money line. I think the thing about Heineke that he's not a game manager. Maybe that's why they didn't run the ball more. Maybe they need to force him to be a game manager a bit more. I think he was taking a lot of chances. Obviously, made an incredible throw to Seals Jones in the end zone just to kind of win that game almost, or at least kind of put them in position to win the game. But he had a terrible pick, and maybe they do need to just rein him back a little bit and have him game manage, hand the ball off, short throws to the running back. And I think that you can do that against Buffalo as long as you avoid the pressure of my guy, Gregory Rousseau, and a couple of other guys that have been getting after the quarterback there for Buffalo. That's definitely going to be the X factor.
In a game on Thursday Night Football against the Giants that was a close game throughout with a backup quarterback, they chose to drop their backup quarterback back 50 times to pass, and they handed the ball to Antonio Gibson 13 times. That's just crazy.
It is. And McKissick got way too much work, too. They really need to stop with the McKissick thing. It's like Boston Scott and for the Eagles. Like, they just need to get Antonio Gibson the ball.
Yeah. So moving on to the next one here, another NFC East team. We've got the Atlanta Falcons traveling to the Meadowlands to take on the Giants in a game where both teams are just awful. Giants are bad. Their only offense is running the ball, not with Saquon, but with Daniel Jones. And Atlanta has given up 80 points through 2 weeks. I've got money on the Atlanta money line. I can't for the life of me figure out why Atlanta would be the underdog in this game. I mean, they played the Bucs close for 3 quarters. The Giants, they're just not a good team. I think they're a contender for a top 2 pick, if not the number 1 overall pick. So I smashed the Atlanta money line on this one.
I love Atlanta. I know DraftKings is doing odds boost. If you take their money line, you can juice it up even more. I absolutely love Atlanta to win this game, and I think the line's telling you a lot. I think the fact that this is a 3-point spread, they're telling you Vegas thinks these two teams are even. If you went out and asked the public, and you went out and asked the gambling community, they would tell you the Giants should be favored by like 5 or 6 in this game. I think people are so down on Atlanta and actually like way too high on New York, especially since Daniel Jones played his best game of his career last week, and they almost won that game. And I actually think it's the opposite, though. They had their hearts ripped out in just like an absolutely brutal way to lose, and they've had some extra time to think about it. I think everyone's going to love the Giants. It's a big fade the public pick for me. Love the Falcons. Nobody likes the Falcons. Nobody remembers the fact that that game was 28-25 in the fourth quarter against the Super Bowl champions in Tampa Bay. Atlanta could have been in that game if Matt Ryan didn't throw a really costly pick 6 at a bad time. Obviously, big if there. Yeah, a couple of them. Big if there. But, that was a game. It was a game in the fourth quarter. And Atlanta got Ridley and Pitts very involved, especially down the stretch. And I think that that's something they're going to have to do against New York.
Absolutely. All right, well, let's keep it rolling here. Cincinnati at Pittsburgh. What do you got on this one?
This isn't a game I have a ton to say on. I think Pittsburgh, this line is weird. It's at like 3.5 now, or maybe 4. It's been moving a lot, and Pittsburgh should win this game, but the line is kind of scaring me a bit. So I'm going to stay away. I know Pittsburgh does have a ton of injuries. I don't know if Watt's playing. I don't know if Devin Bush is playing. I think there's another big injury on that defense that is questionable, but Pittsburgh's got a ton of injuries. Maybe Vegas is just a bit nervous about that. The Bengals looked really, really bad last week. That O-line was a travesty. Burrow had 3 straight picks. That's not in Joe Burrow's DNA whatsoever. So you have to blame the Bengals and their O-line and how they've handled this offseason. It's hard to pick Cincinnati after last week, but I'm going to go Pittsburgh. I'm not confident in it at all.
Yeah, so Pittsburgh has a historically aggressive defense. Cincinnati has an awful offensive line. Joe Burrow has been sacked 9 times through 2 games, which is not something you want to see for a promising rookie coming off of a season-ending injury. It really feels like Cincinnati is going to Carson Wentz Joe Burrow here. But the Pittsburgh offense is off to a bad start, predictably. When you don't address offensive line, you bring back an old quarterback that couldn't do anything last season, and you throw away your first 2 picks on a running back and a tight end. But the Cincinnati offense has much more promise, but I just don't see that they have a way to block the Steelers' pressure, even if Watt doesn't play, which we're unsure about. So, I'd take Pittsburgh, and if Watt plays, I think they win fairly easily.
The Bengals are getting nicknamed the baby Bengals lately. I kind of like it. They're very young. But I don't think the baby Bengals have enough in this one.
Yeah. All right, the New York Jets at the Denver Broncos. Zach Wilson looks totally lost so far. And now he's got to play a very good Broncos defense, minus Bradley Chubb, which is helpful, but Von Miller is going to play. Teddy Bridgewater, what can we say? He's elite, right? And we say that tongue in cheek, but he's playing really good right now. He's at least on the level of Mac Jones or above, and the Patriots just waxed the Jets. So I think Denver should win this game, and I think they should win it pretty big.
Above. I think he's above that level personally, pretty comfortably for me. So, I mean, I'm a Teddy guy though. So yeah, Denver should win this game. The Jets are atrocious. And by the way, I think it's time. Let's start pointing some fingers at Joe Douglas. I know he's everyone's favorite guy. He's an Eagles assistant. He came from here, gets a lot of credit for what went on before he left. And I'm not saying he shouldn't get that, but he's been there a couple years now. He's been there 3 years now. Like, this is not a new job for Joe Douglas anymore. And I mean, obviously, I'm not saying you kill him for the Zach Wilson pick yet, or you kill him for the Elijah Vera Tucker pick yet. But I mean, yikes. I mean, the O-line looks the same. It does not look, I've heard very negative reports about AVT to Elijah Vera Tucker. So, I mean, neither of those rookies are shining at all. And, it's looking rough.
I didn't get the Joe Douglas hype when he was in Philly. I thought most of the Joe Douglas guys that we brought in didn't pan out. I don't understand why people are hyped up about him.
I think he's got tremendous media connections, is what Joe Douglas has. Who he grew up like best friends with?
Who?
Todd McShay and Dave Portnoy.
Well, that's helpful for sure.
He's like best friends with both. It's like such a weird like trio of friends playing football together. But yeah, it's funny.
Yeah. All right, moving on, we have the Miami Dolphins at the Las Vegas Raiders. Tua is out in a weird set of circumstances. We sat on this review show and told you that Tua's x-rays were negative. It was a rib bruise and he was going to play. It was a pain tolerance thing. Now they've come back and said that his ribs are fractured. I don't know if they did another x-ray. I don't know what happened here, but he's out, and the offense just got shut down by Buffalo without Tua. And so I really don't understand this line. The Raiders are only favored by 3.5. I smashed the Raiders in this game, minus 3.5. Carr's playing really well, and the D's performed well against two playoff teams from a year ago so far. And so there's one of those games that seems like every couple of weeks where I just don't get it, and I really don't get this line.
Yeah, Flores, actually, did you see what Flores said today? He said something like he looks better every single day, so we don't know the extent of the injury and how long it'll keep him out for. Like, almost saying like maybe he'll play this week, and it's like, what? Like, they're being so weird with this whole Tua injury, and they always are. Miami is just, they do a lot of weird stuff. But yeah, you're right. The line doesn't make any sense. Derek Carr has been, I think, if you have to make an MVP conversation after 2 games, I think he gets a seat at the table. I think it's him, Kyler, and Brady. Probably, I just off the top of my head, and Kyler's 1-1. I think you have to say it's Brady or Carr, honestly. And Carr, with the wins that they have, and what they have on offense, and not a lot to work with. So I think Derek Carr deserves an absolute ton of respect. And if he goes 3-0 here, that's huge for the Raiders for their playoff chances. I mean, at that point, what do you have to go? You have to go like, I don't know, 6-8 to get to 9-8 at that point if you're the Raiders. And I know that they're going to have a rough stretch here. Obviously, with that division, you're going to have to play Kansas City twice, the Chargers twice. You're going to have to play Denver twice, which looks harder than it looked a couple of weeks ago. But you get the NFC East too, so I mean, you get a little bit of a break there. So it's going to be interesting to see how I mean, it's just year in, year out. We see this with the Raiders where they start really hot and fade down the stretch, and I think they win again here. I'm not going to touch the game just because the line is so weird, like you said, and. But Jacoby Brissett, I don't think he's terrible, but he like historically holds onto the ball longer than maybe anyone I've ever seen. He makes some plays sometimes, and he has a really good arm, but I don't know if that works against the Raiders pass rush that has actually had some teeth in the past few weeks, and with that Miami O-line that looks like just a train wreck. I mean, Max Crosby, he might get like 5 sacks in this game.
Yeah. Okay, moving on, we have the Tampa Bay Buccaneers at the Los Angeles Rams. Potential game of the week category here. This is a potential NFC title game preview. Both teams are really good. I don't think either one of them is quite firing on all cylinders just yet. I think McVay is still figuring out what he can do, what he can trust Matthew Stafford with. Tampa Bay's been turnover prone so far. They had the 4 turnovers against Dallas. They turned it over a few times against Atlanta. The Rams' rushing attack suffered a lot of injuries so far. You also have the Buccaneers with Jason Pierre-Paul and Antonio Brown both on the COVID-19 list. I think in a game that is this close on the road, I think that swings the needle a little bit to the Rams side here. So I think this is a coin flip game, but I'm going to take the Rams in this one.
Yeah, this is actually a game that on Monday I tweeted out that I won't be betting this game. Like, I can't touch this game either side. It's such a mystery to me. As the weeks went on, I've talked myself into the Rams. I've talked myself into, maybe it's because of Antonio Brown and Jason Pierre-Paul, more so Antonio Brown. I think obviously the blueprint, and we've heard it for a decade, is you get at Tom Brady up the middle. You use a D tackle to get him, uncomfortable and having to move his feet in the pocket. And that's been the blueprint for years. And is there a better guy in the history of football at that than Aaron Donald? I don't know. So that's going to be the X factor in this matchup of if Aaron Donald's able to get Tom Brady enough to really slow down that offense. And I think a big factor in, maybe what they would have done with that is quick throws. And the number one guy I would look at for that is Antonio Brown. Maybe Chris Godwin will kind of take that role. Obviously, Scotty Miller he's not a bad player. He was a fine slot receiver before Antonio Brown got there, but it's still a pretty big downgrade from Antonio Brown. When you have that option on offense, not only does it give you the option to use Antonio Brown, who's always going to be single covered, but it also is going to open up things so much for Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, Rob Gronkowski, and even their lackluster passing, or their rushing game, I should say. So I'm a little bit concerned. Maybe it's just the injuries, but I'm going to go with the Rams just because Aaron Donald should be able to get after Tom Brady.
The interesting thing to watch for me here is the Rams defense is set up, to get that split field safety, that too high. We're going to not allow the big play. We're going to allow the underneath quick throws. We're going to rally and tackle, and we're going to make you go on 12, 13, 14, 15 play drives, execute mistake-free football, and go score no chunk plays. Well, they're going up against a guy in Tom Brady who has made a living for 2 literal decades doing just that. He's going to take that short throw and he's going to execute it perfectly, and he's going to move down the field in 12, 13, 14 play drives. And so I'm interested to see if they try to mix this up a little bit, if they try to do some exotic things to Tom Brady. I mean, you can't blitz Brady. You're not going to fool him, but if Aaron Donald's able to get quick pressure up the middle, it could certainly move him off his spot and influence this game.
Yeah, I mean, that's the number one thing I'm looking at. And then probably number 2 would be the Rams being able to run the football. I mean, is Darrell Henderson fully healthy? Do they have to go with Sony Michel? They're going to have to establish a run game for sure to win this game.
Can you run on the Bucs anyways? They've got one of the better run Ds in the league. So
very true.
All right, moving on to the next game. We got Seattle Seahawks at the Minnesota Vikings. Both teams coming off of inexcusable losses. Seattle blows a huge second half lead at home and loses in overtime, I believe it was. Minnesota misses an extra point that would have sent them to overtime. Seattle's going to air this out on Minnesota, and they're going to do it with a better version of Kyler Murray, who lit them up last week, and Russell Wilson. And we know how that worked out last week. So, Seattle, I expect to move the ball at will. Minnesota could pound the ball with Dalvin Cook, just like the Titans did with Derrick Henry last week. But, I mean, Cook's not Derrick Henry, but he's good. I think in this game, Seattle needs to jump out early and turn this into a passing game, get Minnesota off of that running game. I think Seattle wins this game, and I've got money on Seattle over 28.5 points.
Yeah, you said that there's always a line every week that you don't understand with the Raiders. This is the line I don't understand. And it opened at -1. So when it was at that -1, I hammered Seattle money line. I love Seattle to win this game. Minnesota Cousins can't handle pressure. So I completely agree with what you said about getting up early. And I think what you want to do is you get up early on Minnesota, and then you send the dogs. You go get Kirk Cousins because he can't handle the blitz. And I say this every time I talk about Kirk Cousins. I feel like I'm like a broken record. But every time I watch Kirk Cousins, even last week, he's been pretty good this year. But even last week, there's 1 or 2 plays a game where I'm like, why did you get sacked there? Like, you could have easily gotten away from that and made a throw, and he just accepts sacks way so early. So just something I always notice with him. And but yeah, I mean, Tyler Lockett is playing at an all-pro level right now, and no one talks about it because of DK and how good DK is and how physically imposing DK is. And it just feels like year after year, Chris Carson and Tyler Lockett kind of go under the radar as opposed to Russ and DK. They have so many good players in Seattle. I mean, if they were able to build that O-line, which still seems to be a bit of a problem, and build that defense, they would be a rock-solid Super Bowl contender. But you look at those weapons on offense, there's no way Minnesota can contain it when you look at how they struggled last week with Kyler, like you said. So I think Seattle wins, and I think they win convincingly.
All right, and moving into our final game of the week, the Sunday night football matchup between the Green Bay Packers traveling to San Francisco to play the 49ers. 49ers are still banged up. A lot of the issues they had going into the game against the Eagles are still there, especially at running back. And Jimmy G played really bad against the Eagles. On the flip side, the Packers smacked the Lions on Monday Night Football. And I know it's the Lions, but the 49ers almost lost to them in the opening week. I think this is one of those games you don't really know what to expect because Green Bay was really bad week 1, really good week 2. The 49ers were really good for 3 quarters week 1. They struggled against the Eagles and to close out the Lions. Overall, I'm going to trust the Packers and Aaron Rodgers in this game to get it done, but this one is kind of one of those coin toss type games for me.
I'm going to go with San Fran just because Shanahan has absolutely owned LaFleur. I think he's 3-0 against him in LaFleur's time in Green Bay, and 2 of those NFC Championship losses have been embarrassing for LaFleur. So I'm going to maybe I should go the opposite way. Maybe I should say LaFleur's going to come out with a vengeance, calling a great game. Aaron Rodgers is going to be pissed off Aaron Rodgers, but I think San Fran just has their number. I think San Fran knows how to defend LaFleur's offense since it's so similar to Shanahan's. Maybe that's a big part of that. So I just think San Fran's able to run the ball at will here, and even with their injuries. So I'm going to go with San Fran to win a close one.
All right. Well, that is about going to wrap up our show today. Hitting all the highlights for week 3, all the storylines for you guys. And we'll be back here next week, probably on Tuesday instead of Monday, since the Eagles are on Monday Night Football, to break down everything and review. But before we get out of here today, Mark, do you have any final thoughts for us?
I really need to start thinking of final thoughts before final thoughts segment pops up on me. So you go first. You go first here.
All right. Well, my final thought for today, my Madden League starts out tomorrow, my week 1 game. If you have been on the Painted Lines YouTube channel, if you follow us on Twitch, you've seen me go live a couple of times talking about this. I'm going to make a YouTube series out of my league. It's an online 32-man Madden League called the Armchair Football League. So I have the Eagles this year in the league, which makes it a little more special for the Painted Lines. And so I will be live on Twitch tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. Eastern, streaming my week 1 game. I'll be on camera interacting with the chat a little bit and hopefully not raging because I'm losing. And we'll upload it to YouTube later. So you guys go check that out. It's in a playlist titled Armchair Football League Madden 22 on the Painted Lines YouTube channel. So be sure and check that out. And I'll be tweeting out when I'm playing games live, so you can come join in on Twitch if you want to.
Yeah, my final thoughts. I still don't have them, but I'll go with. I'll talk a little bit about college football since that's what I seem to do every week here in final thoughts, and I'll just give you the listeners a couple college football picks if you're listening before Saturday. Notre Dame plays Wisconsin. I'm biased here. I'm a Notre Dame fan. 6.5 points is a neutral field in Chicago, which should be more Notre Dame fans there than than Wisconsin, not Washington. So I would look at Notre Dame plus the points, and I would sprinkle on the money line, but my favorite bet is probably Utah State over Boise. Boise State can't run the ball. Utah State's got a great coach. I hate Boise's coach, and I don't think Boise has anything other than a good quarterback. Utah State won as a massive underdog on the road last week. They're a massive underdog at home this week. Take a look at those noon games if you want to make some money.
All right. So you heard it here first. You can go supplement your paycheck. Maybe you can get out of work early now because you don't quite need that big paycheck, and you can come hang out with us in chat while we're doing our preview shows. We'll make you some more money, but really don't go bet your paycheck. We don't want you to do that. And if you do, it's all Mark. It's not me. So he's the gambling expert. I just do it for fun. So you get to go blame him. But so thank you to all of you guys for joining us for episode number 11 of Chalk Talk. If you enjoy what you heard on today's show, and I mean, we know that you do, be sure you smash that subscribe button so you don't miss the next episode. Drop us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. They really do help us out. You can follow us on Twitter. I'm at _TPL. He's at Mark Henry Jr. I'll be tweeting clips live during the game on Monday night, so you can check those out. So from me, from Mark, from the Painted Lines, we'll see you guys next time.